He will be back next week. Why don't you announce ahead of time when he's going to be here? Because no one will come. Our senior pastor is in Amsterdam, and he is a longer trip this year because he worked with Hispanics actually at the first part of it, and then he did the same thing in English. So our team's over there. They flew out last week, and so everyone's there now, and they should be back late next week, so keep them in your prayers. So I'm going to start off this morning, and we're finishing up this series on transformation. Well, let me say from the beginning, if you haven't been in here up until now, you can listen online, and I encourage you to do that because the review I'm going to do is quick because we have a lot to accomplish today. But there's one thing I want to do to begin and to start it off, and it's simply this. There's 3 things we're going to accomplish today, okay? At the end of the service, this is what's going to happen. Now, how many of you are the kind of person or you have a relative who likes to read the end of a book at the beginning? Anyone like that? Some people, my mother-in-law is like that. It kind of ruins it. I don't know why you do that. But it kind of lets you know where it's going. So, 3 things are going to happen in this service. I'm going to ask you to join a small group. I'm going to ask you to serve. And I'm going to ask you to give money. Now, there used to be a pastor who would always do this, and I've never done it because it's just not me, but I'm going to do it today. I want you to all turn to your neighbor, look at your neighbor. Look at your neighbor, do it, and repeat after me. You ready? Some people are going to get offended this morning. Say it. All right, let's go. This will be good. All right. 3 things to accomplish. Transformation's been the series. Talking about small groups. We started in Romans 12, 1 and 2. We're to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. The word metamorphosis comes from that Greek word, metaphorpho, and it just literally means a complete change. And then we went through past weeks and we talked about changing the way we think about things. So quickly, verses 11 and 12, and our senior pastor, Jeff Adams, kicked it off, and he gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. And it doesn't mean that pastors aren't supposed to do the work of the ministry. What it literally means is pastors are supposed to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. It doesn't mean we don't do work. It means we're supposed to be in the equipping business. At the core of that is an understanding that the body functions best when the gifts, abilities, skills, heart, ministry is performed by the saints. So I see Tony over here on this side. That means Tony has a ministry to Hispanics. That means I should be in the equipping business, but he's going to do a better job at that than I am. It's just the realization of that. I look at college students who are in here thinking, what should our job as pastors be? To equip you for the work of the ministry, but you'll do a much better job reaching college students or ministering to college students. I'll be honest with you. Same applies for high school and middle school. What should our leaders be doing in those areas? Equipping them to do the work of the ministry because they will impact it more. You know, it's all over the place. Who do you think will do the best job ministering on a Sunday morning? People naturally given to those areas they minister? Pastors should equip, and that's the first blank. The next thing we saw in Ephesians 4:13 was this: till we all come in the unity of the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, the perfect man, in the measure of the stature and the fullness of Christ. What it means is we're a family. And we talked about, and that's the blank, is Graceway a family? And it is, but here's the reality. For a lot of people, church doesn't feel like family, or it doesn't function like family. So what would be the best way that we could facilitate church actually functioning like the family God intended it to be? And we saw last week, 14 and 15. So we henceforth be for no more children tossed to and fro, carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men, cunning craftiness, or by the lay weight to deceive, but speaking the truth of love, may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. I will slow down later, but I'm just trying to get through this. Now here's the point. Last week I said we're like children. In what way? We are born with the propensity to believe lies. I used the illustration a few weeks back. I was teaching the 4-year-olds. I could have told all the 4-year-olds in that class, I'm an astronaut. Most of them would go, okay. They would go home and tell their parents, hey, you know Pastor Jeff's an astronaut? Their parents would go, no, he's not. He lied. Why? You're more mature. You know that I'm not telling the truth. But the reality is, in one way, we're all like children with a propensity to believe lies. Men especially. And so I would just say this. If you're at a point in your life where you feel like you plateaued in your growth, plateaued in ministry, plateaued in your job, plateaued in your marriage, plateaued as a father, and you're just kind of stuck there, here's the biggest challenge. Listen to it last week and just ask yourself this. Who are the men or the other people in my life who speak truth into my life where I can take it? Because here's the reality. You might be completely deceived. And they're not doing it in a mean, harsh way. They do it in true love because they have your best interest at heart. So you say, what are all those three things together? As pastors, we feel God, with all of our hearts, has led us that the best way to facilitate equipping and family and growth in our church, the best way for that to happen would be a small group model of ministry. Now today's going to be a little different lesson because we're going to accomplish three things this morning, and it's going to be a more tactical time. It's not going to be just like a sermon, because I'm actually going to ask you to do some things, and they're important. But before I do it, I want to make one last point of this whole series, and it's in verse 16. And this is week 4, supply. A small group model will meet the needs of the body. So how does this work? In verse 16, here's what Paul says. From whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth. And those are the three words I want you to remember more than anything. Every joint supplieth. According to the effectual working in the measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. You'll hear a lot of people teach this verse, and they'll try to take that word increase, and they'll say, if you do these things, the church will get bigger numerically. I'm just going to be honest with you right from the get-go. That's not what this passage is talking about. It's not. This passage is not like a list of things to do so your church can have more people in it, so you can say we have more attendance. And to be honest with you, attendance kind of measures whether or not your church is healthy, but it's not the goal. Our goal shouldn't be, I remember I grew up in a church, this is actually going to be on tape, but that's okay. We used to have a billboard in a church I grew up in. It said, Missouri's largest Sunday school. I look back on that and I think, wow. You're thinking, oh, that was horrible you went to a church like that. Mm-hmm. It was, man, I guess. We were always competing with a church in Kansas City to see who could have it on their billboard. Anyone want to guess what church in Springfield we were competing with in Kansas City? Well, yes. The obsession with being a big church with a lot of people. It's not talking about that kind of growth. On the other hand, if a church is functioning well, should new people come to the family, yes or no? Yes, it should. But you get there and it says this, from whom, and here's the first blank, from whom, we are to live from Christ and to Christ. So this movement comes from relationship with God to live as He is our standard. And Paul emphasizes, here's your blank, every part of the body. So when the body is functioning properly, it increases and builds itself up in love. Now, in the middle of that verse is this little phrase, every joint supplieth. That word supply is usually used to refer to, in the military, they would receive supplies, or if you were going to do something and you needed finances, you would get those finances. But here's the point I want you to get, and this is the big thing. The body has needs. It needs to be supplied. You got to get that first. The body has needs. Graceway's body has needs, like any body would. So then the question comes, how are the needs of the body supplied? Okay? How are the needs of the body supplied? Usually you'll hear this taught, and it's not completely wrong, but it's this. God's put a bunch of gifted members in the body. So we're the body. We're gifted members put in the body. Here we are, okay? And so the needs of the body are supplied when we exercise our gifts. That's true, but that's not the whole point. How many of you remember Star Wars, the Stormtroopers? Raise your hand. See who's with me. All right. Little white guys running around. They were plastic then, but they looked cool when I was in junior high. Those little exoskeletons is really what they were. And the reason I used the illustration that's on your sheet there of invertebrate, basically, those have their skeletons where you can see them on the outside. Now, basically, my skeleton's on the inside, so you can't see this, although there's a picture of it up there. But Exoskeletons and those kind of beings, you can actually see the skeletons on the outside. And here's the reality. When you have one movable bone and another movable bone, and they connect, that is what you call a joint. In fact, look at Colossians real quick. Colossians chapter 2, verse 19. There's this huge debate on how much Paul could have understood about human anatomy and how this word really couldn't mean a joint like we think of it in the body and all this stuff. However, Colossians chapter 2, verse 19, Paul, the same terminology, says this, and not holding the head, from which all the body by joints and bands probably being ligaments, have nourishment ministered. Okay, what's your point? Because this is the big thing. The body has needs. So I have gifts, and I look out here, and I see Tom Miles. Okay, Tom has gifts. Now here's the deal. I'm a member, Tom's a member. I'm a part, Tom's a part. How will the needs of the body be met? Tom and I have to make a joint, and I don't mean, okay, I mean, all right? I mean a joint. The Greek word literally means a connection. Meaning if I'm a mobile part of this body in ministry, and Tom is the same, when we connect relationally in ministry to do the work of the ministry, when we make a connection, it actually says the connection, the joint, the place where two moving parts connect, that actual place, the joint supplies the needs of the what? The body. So some people would say, well, then the needs of the body are met through members. And here's what I would say, not unconnected ones. Now let that set in. It says the needs of the body are supplied not through the members, not every part, but through the joints, the connection. So you say, well, why do you go through this whole thing here on the small groups and all of that? And it's simply this, and we're going to get to it pretty quick here. Without a doubt, the pastors of this church feel led 100% and in complete unity to head towards a direction of small groups. Why? Because we believe that model of ministry in our culture right now in our church will best facilitate, get this, every part of the body getting connected so the needs of the body can be met. That's the goal. Now here's the tough part. How do we actually facilitate it? We prayed as pastors, and this is where God comes along and you need him. Oh, we always need him, but sometimes you think you don't need him, but you do need him. Okay, right? You know what we prayed? Here was the great stretch of faith of your pastors, the great men leading the church, the great trusting in God. God, give us 45 groups. I remember sitting around and we were talking. If we could get 45 groups, okay? I should have preached a whole sermon about, hitting the stick on the ground more than 3 times. I just thought of that. But anyway, prayed for 45 groups. If you would, look on the sheet, and I'm going to get into the details here of these small groups. God has given us, get this, to kick this thing off, over 100 small group leaders. Means when we sat down and said we want to go this direction, and we're thinking, yeah, God, 45 would be good, and you can just see God in heaven, and I don't know who he talks to up there, but he's like, oh yeah, they're not very good, are they? Yeah, that isn't going to get it done. Man, can't they count? 45 isn't going to get it done. 100. Now, if you're an accounting person and you're obsessive compulsive, you'll know because you're counting them right now to see if there's over 100. And there's not on that page. Not all of them are listed. Why? Like I said, there's 3 things I'm going to want you to do. Join a small group, serve, give money. Why? Because that's the way we believe we can best connect our body. So here we go. What kind of small groups are being offered? The first kind of small group would be small group for men. Statistics show that men have very few close friends. And to be honest with you, if you feel stagnant in your life, as lovingly as I can say this, the truth in love, you really probably need some people in your life that can speak some truth into your life in love. You do. These would be all men's groups. To grow would be husbands, fathers, sons, friends, employees, bosses, everything that God intended for us to be. Some groups meet here at the church. Some groups will meet in homes, but those kinds of groups. Next, groups for women. I want to be careful how I say this, of course. But I want to be serious too. A lot of churches, the extent of a women's ministry would be, we're going to get together and fellowship, and we're going to scrapbook and cook and do certain things like that. And I'm not saying you couldn't do that in a group. I mean, us men do more worthless things than that. But here's the point. The point is, women are hungry for true community, desiring a place to tell their stories and listen to the stories of another. Women long for a place to love well without fear of comparison or pressure to conform to unbiblical, unrealistic religious standards. Women's small groups gather to live passionate, challenging, and influential lives for God's kingdom. A host of groups led by women for women. We also have co-ed groups. So what kind of co-ed groups would we have? First of all, co-ed groups for married couples. What would that group focus on? Probably marriage issues, communication. And not just to have better marriages, but so our marriages could work for the kingdom of God. So maybe you're sitting here with your spouse and you're thinking, or maybe you're sitting here with your fiance, or maybe you're sitting here with your boyfriend or girlfriend. We're not that picky. Okay. I'd really like to be in a group, talk about some of those things. Sky groups, we already have them. Basically, our high school counselors, our middle school counselors, and then third through fifth grade counselors. They are a co-ed group. They give themselves to ministering to a certain group in our church, Sky kids, middle school, high school. But they would be in there. Student groups will be coming eventually. We're going to roll out small groups for high school students, small groups for middle school students. No, you cannot join one of those. That would be creepy. Kids groups for pre-K through fifth grade. You're thinking, really, you're going to have small groups for kids? This will become the DNA of our church. Spanish Mi Casa Su Casa groups. Spanish-speaking groups. Although I'll talk about food later, they will have the best food in the church. So I'm not, that's serious. That's true. So general co-ed groups, what would those be? Those would just be a host of people from different paths, places in life. You get a married couples in there with singles and just, both male and female all over the place, so you have co-ed groups. Below that, you have process, support, and recovery groups. Now, what are those? I won't go into detail, but our church is going to work and pray and ask God to lead us to develop these kinds of groups. So we already have a lot of them right now, but you're married to an alcoholic. Your spouse just died. You lost a child. Support groups. Addictions. And here's the reality, whether you know it or not. Everyone's addicted to something, so don't think you're so noble. You just happen to be addicted to something you're not ashamed of, like, other things, but everyone's addicted to something. But recovery groups get through strongholds to be a place where healing can happen. Process groups. A lot of people get stuck in their growth, and they need help getting through a specific thing. Statistics show overwhelmingly that people recover and heal and do better in community, surprise, the body of Christ, rather than just individually. That includes individually just sitting down with a counselor. We want to be a church that has those groups. Think of how many people in your life, not necessarily you, are going through something like that. Wouldn't it be nice to say, instead of just come to church and hear a sermon, why don't you come to church and get some healing? Because our church has groups that we do that. You want to talk about an open door? You're working with somebody and parents with adult children, how to navigate that. Wouldn't it be good to have a place where you could really provide and help? How often will small groups meet? They'll meet either weekly or every other week, depending on the group. What about my kids? Planning for childcare will be the responsibility of each small group, but as a church, we are intentionally, passionately looking into different models to assist parents with young children. What about the curriculum? This is one of the most exciting things. Groups will choose their own curriculum based on their interest and needs. Now, there's a caveat. Graceway will help select the curriculum and offset some of the costs. Now, here's what it means. I mean, it can't be, what's your small group do? We're a fantasy football small group, and we sit around and watch NFL games and just habitually check our computers for the scores, which we'll all be doing this afternoon, okay? You don't have a group around that. It needs to be more intentional than that. But here's the reality. A woman's group might say, we'd like to do Beth more. Here's what it means. Church will buy the curriculum for you, the DVDs. And then once you're done with it, another group could check it out, because that's what you want to do. A men's study might want to go through something by Eldridge, like Wild at Heart, and they say, okay, we want to do that study. Awesome. Couples in a married group say, we need stuff on communication and relationships or sexuality or managing finances or something like that. Great. We'll help you get that. Meaning the group decides what they want to study. That's the beauty of it. And then you'll give us feedback too as pastors. You'll say, we bought that and it really sucked. And then we could tell someone else. Check with them first before you do it. But someone might say, man, this was the most awesome study in the world. Let's tell other groups and let them go through that. Is there a cost? No cost to be in a group. However, let's say you're going through Beth Moore. We would buy the DVDs for you to watch. You could check out. You would have to buy the workbook, okay? But no cost to be in one. What about food? That's up to each individual group. However, no one should feel pressured to purchase food for the group, even if they are hosting. So, and this is especially for ladies, but let me just say this. And the only reason I know this is God gave me a wife who's very honest with me. Here's what can happen. So you're in a group, either it's co-ed or a women's group, and it starts out at the first person's house. And the first person's house who hosts the group has 5,000 square feet, and they cater in a banquet. And you get to host next week. So here's what you get to say. Appreciate that, thank you. When you come to my house, pick up Starbucks and Taco Bell on the way, because that's all you're getting. We're getting into the group, all right? So there's no, I gotta top this. So ladies, and it doesn't apply to you, you're lying. So there's no, they did this, so I feel the pressure to do this, and this group was this, and I don't think our home's smaller than their home, and all that crap, right? So you know what? If you want to have food, you have food, and you can have it every week. If you're the group that like has 12 chefs, go for it, okay? But here's the deal. If you're in a group and the first 3 groups had food, you can straight up say to your group, yeah, I don't cook. Don't judge me, but I don't cook. And we're not going to do it. So that's the food thing, okay? How many groups can I join? As many as you have problems for. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I think of the beginning of Fight Club, if, he just goes to one after another. No. But you know what? Let's say that you're sitting here and you're a married couple, and the guy says, I'd like to be in an all-men's group. But yeah, but I'd want to be in a co-ed group too, or whatever. Or like you're in a process group because you're going through something. Or you got a specific hurt. You say, I need to really be in a recovery group for this. I mean, it's addiction. I'm not going to talk about that with everyone, but I could talk about it here and being in another group. You can be as many groups as you want. If you're unemployed and you have all the time in the world, just fill up your whole life with them, okay? But the reality is you can be in as many as you want. What will dictate that is your schedule. 100% your schedule. But you can be in more than one. Is there a way to get out of a group if I choose it isn't a good fit? And this is church world. So you join a group, because I'm going to ask you to do that in a second. And you show up the first 2 weeks, and you're driving home with your spouse. It'd be like me and Deb. And I go, what do you think, Deb? And she'd go, yeah, I don't like that. Me either. But we're in church. And here's what happened in a big class model. I used to have a class here. It was 300 people coming to it. If somebody didn't show up one week, nobody noticed. But let's say you're in a small group with 5 other couples. You don't show up one week. Is it pretty obvious? Yeah. And then what are they going to do? Call you, hey, we really missed you. Aunt died. Next week. Hey, we really missed you. Yeah, I had a wedding to go to. Hey, really missed you. My kid had a birthday. I thought you had a birthday last week. Oh, I meant my nephew had a birthday. And what you do is you start kind of sneaking out of it, but you don't want to just say, hey, that group ain't working for us. Because you don't want to what? Offend people. Now, here's the beauty of this. So I'm going to sign up for a small group. What happens if I get in a group and it's not the right fit for me? Here's the beauty. We're going to set them up on semesters. And at the end of the semester, you at least have to stick with it for a while. You could say, we're going to start them up again. And you could say, nope, I'm not doing it this time. No pressure. The only thing I could compare it to, you're in high school and you're dating someone. And you get halfway through it. And you're real sensitive. You're not like, now you text them, breaking up, see ya. No, we're not like that. But you know what? Back then you're the sensitive one. You don't want to break up with them because you think you're done with the relationship. So you do one of two things. Either you never break up and you feel guilty, because then you're just using them. Anyway, that's counseling later, I'll tell you. Or what you do is you train wreck it so they don't want you anymore. So you become the horrible boyfriend or the horrible girlfriend, hoping eventually they don't want you anymore, and then you're like, whoosh. We don't want that to happen in small groups. It's not like you're signing up for, we'd like you to commit to a small group for the next 12 years of your life. Could you put that in your planner? We'd like you to commit one time to try it and help us find the fit for you. There'll be an end to it. The first semester would begin in January. We're going to kick them off. And then what would happen after that, you would get to the end. Maybe it'd finish in May, and they would stop officially. Now, some groups will continue to meet, and we hope that their bonds are formed and joints are formed, and all those things will happen. But the reality is there'd be an end, and we'd start a next study. So you could opt out. When will groups meet? That's up to each group. With 100 groups being offered, there'll be a whole host of times and places. What if I want to lead a group or have a question about a small group? See small group at visitgraceway.org, email it. A real human being will look at these emails to help you. Now here's the bottom line, and this is the moment of truth, because all the preaching really doesn't make any difference if we don't get to this. The pastors will all be working with small group leaders to equip. We have over 100 small group leaders. Those small group leaders are even now, through relationships they have, asking people to join a group. A lot of you have already been asked probably. But the overwhelming majority have to say they want to be in a group. Here's what I want you to do today. This is the direction of our church. This is the model of ministry. This is where we're going. But before I just ask you to do it, let me just say this. I know to some of you this is scary. Some of you might have gone to this church for a long time and you've never taken the step to jump in. Some of you might have been here and you say, well, I went to this church before, a small group sucked. Okay, I get it. Some of you might be sitting here thinking, you know what? The whole idea of even being in relationships to that degree, even though you're making fun and you make jokes, yeah, I don't know about that. So here's your step of faith. We're taking a step of faith. We're starting 100 of these groups. Here's your step of faith. Trust God. Trust God to take that step and begin the process to become a part of one. On the card, I'm going to give you time to do it this morning. This is what's odd. Then we got the rest of the sermon. I want you to fill out the card. If you look over a list of all those leaders and there are ones you think, I know that person, or I maybe like to be in the group. It's no guarantee, but you can't have, if all 80 people pick one person, that'd be tough. If you notice, Jeff Adams is not on there, okay? Yeah, he has his group. It's in here. If you'd like to be in a men's group, you would circle A. A women's group, circle B. A co-ed general group, C, or a co-ed married group, D. You say, what's going to happen when I circle this and turn this in? In a second, we're going to take the offering. When you do that, our staff, and this is what we're given to, we have rearranged staff just to accommodate small groups in our model ministry. What we're going to do is we're going to work intentionally to help you, place you in the best group for you. It'll depend on what you want. It'll depend on your schedule. It'll depend on all those things. But this is just saying, yeah, I want to be a part of what Graceway's doing. Why? So you can be equipped. Why? So it can feel like family. Why? So you can grow and the community can grow. Why? So you can form connections with people so the needs of the body can be supplied. So we can actually have a model of ministry where those things can be accomplished. So you say, well, I already know I'm in a group. I'm going to ask you to fill out a card anyway. So here's what I want to do. We're going to play some music. And I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes here just to fill out the card and circle that. And then I'm going to call the ushers down to take the offering, place this in the bucket. That's all we're asking today. And as a staff, we will work with you from there. Take a second. going to pray for the offering and ushers if you want to come on down to take it. Dear Lord, I know what a weird Sunday morning. Lord, I know even now people are filling out these cards. Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would work, Lord, through this body, Lord, to place people where they need to be. And Lord, you promised, you told us that you set members in the body as you see fit. Lord, I pray for the couple who's here, a married couple that's not really plugged in. They would say, okay, I'll take the step. Lord, people, maybe you're here and they just started coming and they don't know many people. They would take the step. People are here, Lord, they've been burned by church or they feel they've been hurt. Lord, they would take that step. And Lord, are people who already feel like it's family and are just sitting here going through, do they have enough time on a schedule? Lord, let us realize this is where the new people will be going. Will we run to meet them and welcome them into a family? Lord, we pray your blessing and direction on this, or the offering we're about to take for the furtherance of your kingdom. In Christ's name, amen. All right. While we're taking the offering up and you're dropping the cards in there, I'm going to ask you to turn to the number 2 reason for connection on your sheet. And it's called service. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this morning, but to be honest, this is important. It takes, and I want you to think about this, 382 people serving on a Sunday morning at Graceway to accomplish all the needs that this body requires. Now think about that, 382. I would say this, 382, that's adults, and that's not preachers or teachers. That's 382 people serving on a Sunday morning at Graceway to make everything happen. I would dare to say that is larger than most churches, okay? And to be honest with you, that's even bigger than a lot of the churches we've sent out from here, okay? So let that sink in. Now, what I did to make it somewhat academic is I have over on the left the weekly volunteers needed in these areas. And then I have next to it the actual volunteer average, okay? And then somebody did math and came up with the percentage. Then for fun, I assigned a grade, just like when you were in school. So it's like we would grade ourselves as a church. So 90% would get an A, 80 a B, 70 C, 60 D, or you would fail. And I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this. You say, man, our church isn't very good. That's not the point. But I would say this. If you were asking me, where would we be a year from now? Here's what I would pray. And I'll get to the last thing here in a second for the end of time. A year from now, I would pray that we would have somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 adults actively participating in small groups. And I believe the question everyone would ask themselves when they walk through the halls of this church is, whose small group are you in? That would become the question. Next, I would pray we would get all A's in here. Nursery through toddler, we get an F. That means they're by themselves right now? No. Just means the workers who work in there work every single week, work both services, oftentimes can never get into a main service. Pre-K, same thing. Doesn't mean we don't have them well cared for, they're not safe. It just means the workers in there, a lot of them work both services every week. They don't ever get to come to a service. They would like to. Elementary, we're doing good, get a B. Middle school, awesome, A. High school, good, B. Children's Welcome Center, B. Audio, main surface, woohoo! A+. Good job, guys. Lighting, main service, an A. Praise musicians, A. Vocal praise, A+. That's why, see, I've tried to get up here singing, and Jeremy says, nope, we're already good, so that's awesome. Service coordinators, we get an A. Sanctuary service team, F. It's because we haven't really started it yet, but those will be helping people to seat. First aid, we get an A. Greeter, we get an A. Shuttle bus driver, we get a B. We could use some more in that area. Traffic control. Well, that doesn't sound very much fun. I know, that's why no one's doing it. It's an F. VIG counter, a C. Watchman, this is a serious one. That's our volunteer security. Watch the cars, watch your property, watch you, watch your kids out there. That's an F, and that's a big problem. Welcome Center is a D, not that bad. It's just we could use more. Portico, we love coffee. That's an A. Resource Center, we love books. That's an A. Audio duplication, unbelievable volunteers who've done that for years. A. Audio website, we have an A. Camera, the main services, we get an A. IT volunteer, A. Pro presenter, all these nice screens up there. B. Translation headsets, we have an A. Sky Kids Nursery on Wednesdays, once again an F to go to what we need to go. Now here's the deal. Eventually, wouldn't it be good if these were all A's, yes or no? Eventually, you quit jacking around as a church and you finally take care of it. Eventually, and here's the deal. Why get rid of an adult class? I tell you what, and I love you, I love you, I love you. I don't obsess about adults going to class. I obsess about this. I don't obsess about grown adults getting another Sunday school class so they can go to 3 different Sunday school classes on a Sunday morning, which some do. I don't obsess about that. I don't worry about that. I don't pray about that. God, give us more classes for our adults to go to. I do pray and obsess and want to do something about F in nursery, F in pre-K, F in security, and F in Wednesday night. Right? Unless someone just stands up and says, I would like not to fail at that. Nothing ever changes. That's the reason we're changing the models. Now, should everyone go sign up for that? No, just pray about it. But over the weeks to come, that's the big thing. All right. So there was one other thing I was going to ask you for. What was it? What was it? Money. Turn to Psalm 90. Most preachers hate talking about money. I was a finance major. I talked about it my whole life. I didn't plan on being a preacher, so it's easy. Psalm 90, verses 9 through 10. Here's something that's awesome about this church. Next year, we celebrate our 70th birthday. Wow. That is a testimony to God's faithfulness and a testimony to the faithfulness of generations who's gone before us. Some churches don't make it 7 months. 70 years. And here's what's amazing about it. There's some churches that are going to celebrate 70 years, but like they're on life support. You know, they got 12 people still meeting and they just won't sell the building. I mean, the thing's died. But here, it's not that way. In Psalm chapter 90, verses 9 through 10, here's what Moses is actually this psalm he wrote. For all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. We're a story. We're a book. The days of our years are 70, and by reason of strength they be 80 years. Yet in their strength, labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. 70 years is a generation, okay? And this church celebrates 70 years. However, as we look back and we're thankful, and we'll do something next year to celebrate 70 years, we will do that. We'll also look forward to another 70 years. So we're going to a new model of ministry, small groups. So here's the reality. Most people, when they talk about money, they run away. I get right down here. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to be honest with you. We started remodeling this campus, and God's been unbelievably good to us. Unbelievable. And through all the first remodels, it benefited certain groups more than others. There's just no way getting around that, even though we're a body. When we did the children's building, absolutely. Nursery through 5th grade, awesome. State-of-the-art, the facilities, all of that. Also benefited our seniors immensely. We took them out of, they were meeting in the basement in a Sunday school class. We brought them up here, we gave them a new classroom, located right next to the auditorium, close. The escalators, people said, oh, you're showing off with escalators. I just looked at them. No, not everyone can walk up and down stairs easily. Well, they were expensive. Yeah. We want seniors to be able to walk into this church, and if they have trouble navigating stairs, we want them to be able to go up and down them. That's why we did it. We had a part-time pastor on staff who administered unbelievably faithful to that group, and he resigned, and we said, okay, we have a decision to make. We replaced it with a full-time pastor committed to that for seniors. Parking places out there. And then this room is for everybody. I get that. It is. We all celebrate it and enjoy it. But there were 2 groups that were going to wait. And it was middle school and high school. They were going to wait. And in our mind, we thought we would build a new student building. That's what all churches do. That's what they all do. And that cost about $6 or $7 million. So we had incurred debt for this one, and we're fine. But I thought, we'll have to wait years. And then something more important than money came up, and it was this. And I started thinking about it, and other leaders started thinking about it, and pastors started thinking about it, and it was this. Why segregate our students somewhere else? This is important. And I could go through all the statistics and all the church models. You say, well, I know these churches, they built student buildings. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying this. We made a decision here intentionally. We don't want our students outside. We want to walk through our foyer and see high school students sitting around portico. We want to see junior high students talking to their parents after a service. We want to see the leaders in those ministries talking to the parents. We want, especially middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, back here, rather than in a separate building over there. And high school back here, rather than traipsing up to the gym up at the point. It's funny, I told some parents that, and I said, well, you know, when it's raining and it snows, and of course everyone's like, well, I walked to, whatever. So we said we'd begin it. The cost of it would be $1.8 million. Phase 1 was to relocate all the offices from downstairs in the classrooms. And we've done that. If you go down there right now, don't go down there now, but some of the classrooms, like if you were ever in Old Shepherd School when it was down there, or Leon's old office, they're smashed. Demo started. $100,000 it's already paid for. Next would be phase 2, which is what we're demoing right now. It's hard to see what that is, but the bottom there is where the old offices would be. The room up to the top of that, in the middle there is, we call it G106, the Old Shepherd School room. Used to be where Way of Life used to meet. And then above that is where junior high used to meet a long time ago when I taught it, kind of a storage area now. Phase 2 would be to remodel that for a student lounge, a game room, and then additional education space, specifically targeted primarily at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but high school would use it too. Cost of that is $300,000, and we've begun. We already got the money, it's already paid for. Okay? I told you how it was going to end, right? Ushers, if you would pass out the cards. Now here's the deal. Phase 3 is $1.4 million. Phase 3 is simply the remodel of what was the gym for high school and middle school. You think on Sunday morning? Sometimes not. For all of that. Where are we going to get $1.4 million? Here's the reality. We decided we didn't want to borrow any money. Could we trust God to pay for $1.4 million? On your sheet, if you're still keeping the blanks, I think the blank at the top was 7 key years in a person's life. And I just want you to think about when you were 6th grade through 12th grade, how impactful were those years? How important were the decisions you made? If we're going to be a church that reaches out for another generation of this church, we have to get serious about how we're doing ministry. 70 is raising money for another generation to get them back in this building, and not just back stuck in a room, but everything they need. So what would it look like? Here's what it looks like. 700 people giving 700 gifts over 7 months to raise $1.4 million. Okay? 700 people giving 7 gifts. So what's the first gift? Well, the first give up there is $7. Okay? And you're thinking, I'm good for that. All right. $7 is for our Sky Kids. And this morning, what the Sky Kids are learning, so they can participate in this, not that they're just watching the parents, it's simply this. If they earn 35 Sky Bucks for saying their verses, for doing all that stuff, that's equivalent to $7. So we're praying 150 of our kids will do their verses, participate in class to earn the Sky Bucks, not to go buy something in the store, but to give to this so they can participate. Now, some of you sitting here, now, are Sky Bucks real currency? They are. If you take it out to Starbucks after this and give them that, they will receive it. No, it's not, okay? It's a way to allow them to participate. Okay, so that's who we were thinking of there. Next up, we need 100, I think it is, people to give $17. We're really shooting at middle school there, although it could be anybody, to be honest. I'm not like, if that's you, that's awesome. I mean, it's just getting involved where you can. That's 3 lattes, 3 trips to Starbucks. So even this morning, Nick is over there, middle school, the guy's saying, okay, middle school, you need to participate in this. It teaches them to grow. It teaches them to be generous, all those things. Next after that, and this we were shooting really a lot at our high school students, but even more than that, because we don't have that many high school students. But when you're thinking about high school students, a pair of shoes. So, 170 people to give $70 over the next 7 months would do it. Next after that, $700. That 100 people in our congregation would do that. Over the next 7 months, I'll give $700. Obviously, it's $100 a month. This is above what you already give in your tithes, your offerings. If someone says, well, I'll just quit tithing and give all to the building. That's fine. The kids will have a place to be, but we'll be in here with the lights out and all unemployed pastors. So don't do that. But that's what it would be. The next one, we would need 100 people to give $1,700. That is a 60-inch Samsung LED. I know exactly what it is because I looked it up at Best Buy. That's what it is. It's about what, a 60, 72-inch or 84 LED TV. 100 people who would do that. The next one. It gets tougher. 65 people in our church who would say over the next 7 months, I'll give $2,700. That's a stainless steel refrigerator. I'm homeless now. I will have to move into a new home. I will have to buy a refrigerator. That's why I'm shopping for these things, so I know. That's what it would be. Now, before I go into the next ones, let me just say this. I know these are not easy. If you already give passionately to this church, this would be a sacrifice. I know that. I know. The economy's bad. I know. I'll hear this. We just sent a bunch of people out to help with the church. I know. Awesome. You think that can happen? I do. With all my heart. I think we can pay for all this and not borrow a dime. I believe we can. For most of you in here, you need to look on there and think about what those would be. That's the overwhelming majority of us. I emailed my wife last week and I gave 3 different amounts because, I'm not going to be a hypocrite, and I said, which one should we do? She just emailed back, we should do as much as we can. That's convicting. Next, we would need 10 people to give $7,000 over the next 7 months. We would need 4 people to give $70,000. You get to close out the year before taxes are due, or you get the refund next year, or business, whatever. And then we'd need 1 person to give $107,000. Now here's the deal, and this is where God comes and picks you up. So we prayed for 45 groups, and we got how many? Over what? 100. And get this. Before I ever mentioned this to the congregation, the pastors knew, our team knew, staff knew, I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. And I'm walking through our foyer a few weeks ago. A guy just comes up to me, faithful member of our church, says, hey, Jeff, business is closing out at the end of the year, and is there any special needs or things we have coming? Okay. Yeah, we're getting ready to run out this campus thing. He says, okay. Yeah, I'll do an offering then for that. I go, great. We haven't even put it out there. No cards, no nothing. Over $100,000. So no, hold on. No, I know that's here I want you to see. Because I'm being honest. I throw it out there and I'm like, I'm half in, half out. 45 groups, small groups, I don't know. Half in, half out. God, our church really do that? And God just comes along and says, now why are you worried about that so much? I'll give you a little something to encourage you. Before you ever tell a soul in the church, how about I take care of the number 1? Okay? So it's really 1.3. And you see there's a question mark up there at the top. Okay? Then we'll need some other people to come up with $500,000. Now here's what you can do. You can end up looking around the list. Some of you are thinking, I wish I had 70 grand, Here's what I want you to focus on. What could you do? Don't worry about what someone else needs to do. What could you do? I was a finance major. I studied money my whole life. And then when I started getting into ministry all the time, I studied how people react to it. My favorite story ever. C.S. Lewis is walking down the street with somebody, a theologian, with a guy, and a guy comes up who's a beggar and says, "Can I have some money?" And C.S. Lewis empties his wallet. The guy is walking with C.S. Lewis, looks over at C.S. Lewis and says, "Don't you know all he was going to do is take that money and blow it on ale?" C.S. Lewis says, "That's all I was going to do with it." What's so noble about money? We're called to be generous. I can't believe we talk about money in church. The whole world talks about money. Jesus talked about money. You're supposed to do 5 things with your money. You got to pay taxes with it. You got to provide with it. You ought to enjoy it. You ought to save it. And you ought to give it. Don't give it all so you can't save it. Don't save it all so you can't give it. And I can't do anything about the taxes. That belongs to Caesar. But the reality is, what could you do? Now, this is a big decision. You want us to fill out the card now? No. Well, some of you I do, but some of you need to go talk about it. Like if I went home and said, "Hey, Deb, I mortgaged the house." Oh, that would have been something to talk about with her first, okay? So some of you want to take home the card and say, what could we do? We're going to be talking about this for the next 2 months to do that. Some of you could sit here this morning and you could say, "I already know this is what I could do. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to fill that card out. When I finish up here, I'm going to pray and I'm going to be done. If you come out and put it in those buckets for collecting to kick this off, to get going now. If you're a guest today, what do we want? We'd like for you to give $500,000. No! If you're a guest today, we're not asking you to do this. But at the same time, let me say this with all my heart. We're supposed to be generous people. We are supposed to exhort each other to this. I am passionate about seeing 6th through 12th grade back in this building downstairs. So what would it be cool to see a year from now? Adults in small groups church-wide, A's on all of those things, and our kids downstairs without going a penny in debt, and us taking care of the body. That would be a great thing to pray for. There's a million questions. What about the point? What about men's basketball? What about women's and men's volleyball? What about all that other stuff? If you will get online and watch the podcast State of Grace and email your questions in, we will ask them over the weeks to come. Because you say, what about this? What about this? What about this? We will answer those questions. Just get on the podcast front page, hit it, send in your questions. Well, what about this? We'll answer it live, okay? I believe God can do this through our congregation. I really do. Would you consider what God would have you to do? Let's pray. Dear Lord, I love you. I thank you for this church. 70 years, the lives that have been changed, people mentored, people sent out, kids who grew up in this church that are now adults with their own kids. Lord, could we turn for the future and trust you for another generation? As we celebrate next year 70 years, Lord, would you make us even more generous? Or would you do something unbelievable?